In today's video, we have the latest NHL trade rumors involving teams like the New York Rangers, the Boston Bruins, plus could Patrik Laine find himself on the move again before the end of the season? Plus, more NHL games have been postponed. Brad Marchand has spoken out against the NHL in its decision to not send players to the Olympics. We have some latest updates involving the World Juniors, including Team USA having to forfeit a game, waivers news, a signing, and more. All that coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot of news to cover here in today's video, so let's dive right in and get started. Of course, feel like I'm a broken record here, but we have more NHL games postponed. They postponed another 10 or 11 games today, including games scheduled for the rest of this month and into the early part of January. Some of that has to do with COVID outbreaks, and a lot of it has to do with Canadian restrictions on capacity limits in NHL arenas, with some places not allowing any fans or some at 50%, and the NHL is trying to protect its business model here and reschedule those games at a later time when they can have fans so that the team in the league can make money. It's just that simple. They have a lot of lost revenue. Of course, there's a lot of money that's been lost in the past 18 to 24 months, and they don't want to really lose anymore, and you can't blame them. A lot of NHL arenas take in anywhere from at least $1 million per game, many of them which are more than that, some cases up to 2 to 3 million in the larger venues and larger cities. So it's certainly not good news at all. We did see a situation in the US where the CDC has recommended lowering quarantine times down to as little as 5 days. So there is some discussions going on that the NHL and its doctors and the PA are looking at that. No word yet if there will be any changes or not. Essentially, the rationale behind that decision is that the time that you're most likely to transmit the virus, if you have it, is the 48 hours before you know, especially if you have any onset of symptoms, in the 2 to 3 days afterwards. So that 5-day period is the most dangerous time for you to pass it on to somebody else. So that's, makes sense why they would consider shortening that. So we'll see what they do. I know other leagues are looking at changing protocols. Some have already made some adjustments. Players are apparently really getting frustrated here. They want to play, many of which are asymptomatic here. There's still anywhere from 130 to 150 players and coaches in protocol here that cannot be part of any NHL action. It's just a really difficult situation, and the NHL really needs to put together a better plan here to move forward. It seems like they're just kind of going here at a whim, on a whim, and not really having any solid structured plans. And I don't know, it's getting difficult here for everybody involved, and we need something to change. I know they can't control the virus by any means, but they can control how they work around it and try to live with it here. So obviously, unfortunately, though, the NHL does have a lot more than just its own decisions and its own doctors they have to abide by, when it comes to Canadian and U.S. federal, and then, of course, local health authorities and their rules and restrictions. And, it can be hard to work around. So there's getting more and more difficult to see a scenario where all teams play all 82 games that were originally scheduled. Is pretty much going to be the best they can do moving forward, and that's really hard to say what it's going to be. I mean, we have taxi squads in there now, and we'll see. I mean, Brad Marchand went on Twitter today to kind of speak out against the NHL not sending players to the Olympics, feeling basically that it should be the players' wish whether or not they want to go, not whether or not the NHL really wants to go. I'll show you what he put here on Twitter, and we'll kind of go through this here quickly. It's received a lot of support from other NHL players around the NHL, many of which are kind of probably happy that he spoke out and kind of said what they were thinking, so they didn't have to, I guess. But he says here, the NHL and the NHLPA can change the rules in the CBA to add a taxi squad so they don't miss any games and don't lose any money, which has already been agreed upon, but the players will pay back in escrow until the owners are made whole from what they have lost during this pandemic, regardless of how many games are missed. Yet they can't do a taxi squad during the Olympics, so they can honor the agreement they made so the NHL players can go. Please tell me that's not bullshit. And for all of you who want to pipe back about forfeiting pay while being gone, yeah, not a problem. Let the players make their choice. So it seems like NHL players would be more than happy to basically take a leave of absence for a couple of weeks, not get paid from their NHL teams, let NHL players, called up to a taxi squad, basically replace them and go represent their country at the Olympics. And I guess you can see if you look around what other leagues do, a lot of other leagues do support international competitions a lot better than the NHL because they're trying to grow the sport. They're more than just money. I mean, yes, the NHL is a business. They have to make money. These players are basically assets. I mean, looking at it from the NHL's business perspective, these guys help the owners make tons of money. It's just that simple. They want to protect their assets so that they don't, lose those, right? So I understand from both sides why the some things may be more appealing than others. I can understand why the NHL is not overly interested, but they need to look at things from a different perspective, that if they allow the players to go and have that freedom, they can probably grow the sport more. They can really push things forward to get more players in more parts around the world, growing the sport, and that's good for business too, right? To have more fans in more places, and I don't know, there's more to it, right? So I understand what Marchand's saying as well. Same time though, you can't expect fans to pay for NHL quality, players and product, and then get a watered down product during the Olympics. But at the same time, it's only every 4 years. To me, it makes more sense for the NHL just to pause for a couple of weeks. That way they don't have all those players not in the lineup. So I don't really think having taxi squads over the Olympic break is really the answer. I understand Marchand's sentiment that he wants to have the ability to do that, and a lot of employers would give their people the ability to take breaks or a leave of absence and go. It's a really unfortunate situation. A lot of NHL players are extremely frustrated here, but you know what? They weren't really speaking out too much beforehand. So, I mean, maybe they should be voicing those frustrations at Donald Fair and the NHLPA. I really don't know what happened in negotiations. Obviously, I wasn't present there, but it makes you wonder how hard they fought to give them that choice, and how hard they fought to keep the option open when the NHL was trying to, pull out here. Because clearly they had that, material disruption caused to their schedule, and I don't know really how clearly that was defined, right? So it's hard to say where this is going to go. I don't imagine anything's really going to come from it. Hopefully we do see a better international calendar of events moving forward, and the NHL finds a way to adapt its policies here so that they can kind of get through these games with NHL quality players on the ice. That's what the fans want to pay for to see, and it's getting frustrating here with having so many players out. But at the same time, like I said, there's a lot of things within this world we can't control right now, and it's been going on for so long that I think it's just kind of hitting a boiling point from a variety of facets here of many stages of life, which you can clearly understand after almost 2 years of going through everything. You can understand why everybody is tired of all this and just wants to go back to normal. And let's hope we can get there in the not too distant future. Now, as I mentioned as well, some updates from the World Juniors, kind of staying with unfortunately with a bit of a COVID theme here. We saw today that the Americans had some positive COVID tests. They had one that came through late last night apparently, and it was one of their goaltenders. And then they found out through the night into the morning that another player, which was one of their forwards, also tested positive. So they've taken the positive tested players and the players that they were rooming with. They each have a roommate. So those 4 players are in their own quarantine, and then the rest of the players are off quarantining here on their own as well. So everybody's been kind of separated and quarantined at their respective rooms and hotels. They're going to have to go through further testing here. But obviously their game against the Swiss had to be, canceled because of those positive tests. With the rules that the IIHF has put in place in conjunction with the health authorities in Alberta and Canada, that's the rules that they've come to agree upon to hold this tournament. Now, because of that, and they were not able to play, the U.S. had to forfeit. So this game is going to go down as a 1-0 victory for the Swiss, which just seems really weird, if you think about it. But it's a short tournament, not a lot of opportunities to really reschedule, and those were the rules that were agreed upon going into this. So as much as it seems really weird, you can claim it's not fair, and I understand, and I won't disagree with you on it, but those were the rules that all these countries were aware of going into this before it ever started. Now, they do have a path forward to play their next game, which will be tomorrow against Sweden. So to get back out of quarantine, players need to do 2 tests and have it come back negative each time. So obviously, depending on if they have any additional positive tests, it also will depend on who those players are. If the players are the roommates of the other positive players, well, that's a little bit easier to navigate through than they can say that they probably have it contained to just those players. But if it's spread to other players and you have anybody else not connected to that close contact range, positive, then they're probably not going to be able to play that game either. But if they already conducted a series of tests that's supposed to come back tonight, apparently late tonight, and they're going to be conducting more in the morning, that's going to be expedited, so we'll have the results ahead of the game being scheduled time tomorrow, and then we'll know. But if the U.S. runs into any more issues, they could be in some serious jeopardy here in this tournament, without even stepping on the ice, really. They won their only game so far, but it's certainly, not a situation that's easy to work with based on what the rules are for this tournament. So certainly a weird situation there. We have one player on waivers today. That's Michael Scarbalsa of the Washington Capitals. He's appeared in 7 games, put up 3 points. He's mostly played in the American Hockey League, but he's been kind of bounced back and forth between the Caps and their AHL team the past 2 to 3 seasons. He's 29 years old, went undrafted, doesn't have a ton of experience, so unlikely he gets claimed. His American Hockey League contract is actually one of those that actually pays him a substantial amount more above average. So he has a 2-way contract where he gets $750 at the NHL, but he's making like $425 at the American Hockey League. So a lot of teams are not probably going to want to touch that anyway. So more than likely he clears and returns to their AHL affiliate. We also had news today that the Ottawa Senators signed their 2021 first-round pick from the NHL draft, Tyler Boucher, who was from the U.S. American National Team Development Program, who played at BU this year. Now, things have not gone well for Tyler at Boston University, who's appeared in 17 games but only put up 3 points. It just really wasn't working out for him there. So he's left school, signs his entry-level contract with the Senators. He won't be going to the NHL, though. He will report to their AHL affiliate with the Belleville Senators only until the OHL resumes play, because his junior rights are actually owned by the Ottawa 67. So very convenient that he can go to Ottawa but play junior hockey for the 67s under head coach Dave Cameron, which of course very familiar with the Senators, former head coach there. So clearly that's the plan for him moving forward, is to hopefully have a much better second half of his season with the 67s. Next year he very well could end up playing in the American Hockey League and kind of work his way towards the NHL, but it was a little bit of a reach for him to be going at number 10 overall by the Sens last year. Certainly a very physical player. Many feel that he has a real good shot at making the NHL, but he's not necessarily going to be your high-end talent. Likely going to be like a third-line, really, checker kind of guy who can play a real solid physical game of hockey and chip in a little bit offensively. But we'll see. He had some not-so-good months there at BU, but he can hopefully get things turned around playing for the 67s group in Ottawa and have a shot at having a real solid second half of the year. Staying with Ottawa for a moment, they have recalled goaltender Matt Murray. Of course, you likely recall that Murray cleared waivers not long ago when sent to Belleville. Had a chance to play a little bit, but has just coming out of quarantine here as well, where he had to complete a 10-day quarantine. He got on the ice today for the first time in 10 days. Of course, Anton Forsberg entered COVID protocol. Philip Gustafsson gets out tomorrow, so we'll see what they decide to do. A lot of their games have been postponed, so they won't be playing here for a little bit. So I'll be not quite sure exactly who will be between the pipes on their next game action. Now on to a little bit of NHL trade rumors I want to take a quick look at here. There's one article from Boston Hockey Now talking about some additions that the Bruins might make before the end of the year. Of course, we know about Tuukka Rask, and the year that they acquired Tuukka Rask is the same year that they drafted Phil Kessel. Now, could Phil Kessel make a return to Boston? We know that they're likely going to be in the market for adding some help, whether it be within the forward group, possibly on the blue line as well, ahead of the NHL trade deadline, assuming everything goes well for the Bruins and they remain in the playoff picture. And Phil Kessel was mentioned by Boston Hockey Now as being a potential target for the Bruins to take a look at. Now, to me, I think it's a possibility. It's obviously going to boil down to price tag, but I wouldn't be a little bit more surprised if they went for more of a center iceman than a winger, given the fact that they, haven't really had a real solid number 2 guy. Obviously, without David Krejci, Charlie Coyle hasn't exactly been the best scenario there. They gave Jack Studnicka a little bit of a look early on. He didn't stick there. To me, that number 2 center would be the ideal player that they'd want to target, more so than a Phil Kessel. But if that proves to be not possible or too expensive, maybe they go down the Kessel route. But this is not the first time we've heard the rumors about a Kessel return to Beantown, and it may not be the last either. I don't know. But to me, I'm going to say that it's probably not likely. I think they have plenty of other targets they could be looking at here, and I really think it makes more sense for them to target a center if they're going to be adding to their forward group. Will Phil Kessel be traded? I have no doubt he will be. He's one of the remaining assets with the Coyotes that were pretty much a given will be moved. Just a matter of where he goes and when exactly, what the price is going to be. But he's made it known he wants out of Arizona. He's in the final year of his contract, and he will be a pending unrestricted free agent and can decide next year what his future holds on his own accord. But for me, a return to Boston doesn't sound quite likely just yet. Latest article in The Athletic from Arthur Staple looking at the New York Rangers and some potential additions they may make later on in the season. I know many fans, because the article was actually more of an opportunity to ask questions, and a lot of fans seem to be inquiring about the possibility of Riley Smith joining the Rangers, given the fact that the Vegas Golden Knights are going to have a lot of salary that they need to clear out to be able to activate Jack Eichel and Alec Martinez later on in the season, and Riley Smith being a pending UFA seems like the ideal candidate to make that happen, given the fact that he's making $5 million. That would go a long way to helping their salary cap situation. So certainly, given the history there with Gerard Gallant as the head coach of the Rangers, former head coach of the Vegas Golden Knights, the connection makes sense. The Rangers are, having a real solid year, but they are a little bit thin on the right side. Certainly more strong and more deep on the left side of the wing. So adding a right winger makes a lot of sense. Riley Smith has that connection, and I do think it makes a lot of sense. There's been rumors about Kessel even being a target of the Rangers as well. Not really sure exactly which one they would go for. I think they would probably go for Smith over Kessel if I had to be, making a bet on that today. There was even some talk and questions asked in the article about Tomas Hertl of San Jose being of interest to the New York Rangers. It's a possibility. If they do that, they could maybe, obviously with Philip Hedl not really having a strong season at center, obviously Hedl can be more of a winger, which is what, they might have to go down to the longer term plan for him to be, or maybe Hedl ends up being part of a trade package. Is really hard to say, but Hertl is a potential target, but I think a Riley Smith trade to me makes more sense. I think a Hertl trade would cost too much, and I'm not really sure that it's exactly what the Rangers need. I think they can get through with what they have down the middle for right now without mortgaging the future, because I think Chris Drury will add to this team and give it a little extra boost going into the playoffs if they keep things going the way they have been. But at the same time, I don't see him mortgaging the future, for making a run for the Stanley Cup this year. This is the first year they've really been competitive towards playoffs since they've been going through their rebuild, and I don't see them really making, a big expensive trade to add, a star player of that nature here at the deadline. Now, of course, another article from Luke Fox of Sportsdom making some more predictions here. One of them involves Patrik Laine being traded yet again before the trade deadline, citing the fact that the Jackets are a team that's been obviously acquiring a lot of future assets, clearly a team that's missing a lot of pieces to really have a shot at contending, and he doesn't feel that Patrik Laine is really going to want to stick around and be a part of that longer term. So it makes sense, but the pending RFA would end up being traded here again. He's either going to be traded or he's going to be signed. That's a given, but what will it be? Will Jarmo Kekalainen move him for some additional future assets, or will they consider trying to come to contract terms and sign the Finnish winger to a longer-term deal? Of course, any acquiring team is not as simple as acquiring a rental. It's, obviously Laine's a situation where he's going to be owed a pretty substantial qualifying offer here in the offseason. So they really have to be prepared to commit to him longer term if they're going to make that acquisition. But there certainly was a lot of teams interested in him when he was first traded from the Winnipeg Jets. I do think that with Luke Fox's prediction here that it is a possibility it could come true. I do think it's unlikely that the Jackets remain in playoff contention later into the season. And I can see this being a real possibility. Where will he go? Only time will tell, but there's certainly lots of teams that are further along in their rebuild process that might find this top winger, who's a potential 30-40 goal scorer like he has been in the past, very attractive. So let me know your thoughts. If Laine is going to be moved yet again, and where do you see him going if so? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.